Welcome everyone to our session on mapping fire districts for North Carolina response rating system. I have here with me Adam Blythe, who's the GIS coordinator for the North Carolina Department of Insurance, the Office of the State Fire Marshal. He has a master's degree in GIS from North Carolina State University and a bachelor's degree in sociology from Western Carolina University. I also have with me Vernon Ward, who's a retired fire chief who took a job with the Office of State Fire Marshal as a contractor to do inspections. In 2010, he became a full-time fire rating inspector, and he's currently the senior field inspection and one of the senior field inspectors with. And I will go ahead and let everybody know that if you would like to ask a question, please enter that into the chat. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to Adam and Vernon.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak today at the conference. We've given this talk, I guess, a few times with, I guess, the NCPMA, the Property Mappers, Secretary of State workshops. This is a great opportunity because I know there's quite a few different scenarios where someone would need to map fire districts. You know, it's not just property mappers sometimes. So this is a chance to kind of reach out to you folks and even the folks that have seen this to give updates on kind of what's going on with fire district mapping in North Carolina. Just some quick background. North Carolina is the only state in the United States that we have our own insurance rating inspectors, and which is Vernon's field supervisor for our inspectors. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And the main purpose of this entire topic today is just kind of maybe clear up some confusion. I've been with the Department of Insurance for about 2.5 years now. I came in to kind of help with work on some of the GIS needs that they had within the department. And before that, I worked in local government for about 8 years. And so I kind of understood coming in the confusion from that side of, you know, every time there's a fire request, you get a request for a fire district, for ratings for fire districts, or what exactly do you need for that? And this is also a good session for anyone just having to continuously map fire districts. We'll talk about some best practices and just some methods that we recommend for mapping fire districts in general. So again, you know, it can be a confusing topic. And I know there's a lot of different things batting around, like what's a 5-mile district, what's a 6-mile district? How do municipal districts or boundaries fall into this? So we're going to cover these topics today. But first, I want to hand it over to Vernon, and Vernon's going to give you kind of a basic overview of what the 9S rating system is, and just explain, you know, how that whole process works.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. The rating and inspection section for Office of State Fire Marshal, our primary responsibility is to determine a rating, a public protection classification for each fire district, each fire protection area in the state. So underwriters for insurance companies can use in their calculation for fire insurance rates for property owners. And so in doing that, we're looking at a lot of different things with the fire department, you know, their response, their training, their equipment. But a big part of this is the station location, their boundaries, the hydrants, where the hydrants are located, their water points, and all that stuff goes into play to obtain this rating. And it's a 1 to 10 scale, and 1 being the best, 10 being not so good, or not really any fire protection at all. And the mapping is a big part of this, because if the lines are not correct, then the classifications applied to that property owner may be wrong if one line's out of place, or if there's not a hydrant, you know, within 1,000 foot. These are the kind of things that we need to know, and that's why we brought Adam on board to help us clear up a lot of this information and work with the counties to get better data so we can submit this to ISO, who is the one that's actually responsible for publishing insurance rates to the insurance companies in North Carolina.
So I'm going to piggyback off of that because Vernon just mentioned ISO, and I wanted to, kind of revisit that because we're not talking about the data standard. We're talking about Insurance Services Office, and basically all the information that's mapped out that you send in to the Department of Insurance is used to generate these ratings. And so that, I guess the focus today is also just help any mappers out there realize how important the data you send us is, and as it goes into these calculations. And we have ways to kind of help if there are some missing data here and there, but just this kind of help understand the importance of maybe moving forward, building really good data sets for these inspections. So Vernon, and I think maybe this next slide will, you can see that the importance of a rating can, if you go from class 10 to 9, you can save certain amount or a certain percentage in the overall rating or in that portion of the rating. But one thing I wanted to bring up, and Vernon, is this correct that previously you're required to do a rating with, I guess, within 10 years or inspection? That's changed, hasn't it, recently?
Yeah, we used to come in and make sure fire departments were maintaining a minimum standard every 5 years, and we were trying to get to the rating at least every 10 years. And now at the end of 2021, we're pretty much going to be on about a 5.5-year schedule where we'll be re-rating these departments every 5.5 years. So we're on track to do that. Our administrative rule says we'll be there at least every 10 years, but we want to do a little better than that because things do change rapidly.
So you'll be hearing from us a little more, but with that being said, and I think I have a slide on this in the future, anytime you have a major change or development in your fire insurance districts, you can always submit them to us, and we can submit them to ISO for changes anytime, not just when we come around every 5 years. All right, so now with some of that information behind us, I'm going to try to help just go over some of these definitions of some of these terms you might hear applied to a rating, and from the GIS side of things, just to kind of help clear up some of the information. You might hear about a rural versus municipal district. These are the two main, I guess, districts that can result in a rating. And here's some of the language from the statute, but a fire district may not extend more than 5 road miles from a responding fire station, more than 5 road miles, but within 6 road miles for a rural district from a responding fire department. And here's an example of that. So municipal boundaries, Lincoln Municipal District. This is a Lincoln Municipal District. This is an example of that. Municipal districts always follow municipal boundaries. And I'll talk about this in a little bit, how the importance of, I know there's been a statewide effort to keep up with municipal boundaries and why that's important, because these municipal districts follow municipal boundaries, and that's kind of the rule of it. And they cannot have a 6-mile district. You could have a rural district as seen in this blue area right here. That's an area between 5 and 6 miles that can receive a rating and can be serviced by these fire departments, or can have mutual aid to get credit from, if I'm correct about that, Vernon, from a neighboring fire department. Okay. You've heard about 5-mile districts. This is basically how ISO will see it. See the blue line, the blue lines here are, this is 5-mile in the station, but it's within this total fire district. And then you can add in 6 miles to the coverage. And then you have what's called a class 10 area, which is all the area that doesn't lie within that. The main point that we want you to realize today is that this is still a rating. And I'll probably make this point 2 or 3 times. And this is where the confusion was happening for me from a local jurisdiction standpoint was sometimes we'll get fire districts that have gaps in them because I guess the local jurisdiction feels like that they have to stop at 6 miles in sending a fire district. We want the full entire response district as seen here because we want to know where there is class 10, but also this gives you room to improve and add a new station to improve on that in the future. With that, so those are some basic definitions for rural and municipal boundaries. Every time there's an inspection, we try to send out a data request letter to, normally, I guess we send it out to fire marshals, GIS shops, who's ever involved. And I know there's some vendors involved with creating this data. These are the main things that we're requesting. Fire response district, municipal boundaries. If you want to send fire locations, station locations, that's helpful. We've been keeping up. That's a requirement for us as in the inspection is to get those coordinates. So we actually keep up with station locations. Hydrant information. And if you can label them by, is it and I'll show you some definitions for this in a minute. Suction water points, dry hydrants, or pressurized hydrant points. And again, I made this point earlier, but send OSFM updates periodically if you need to. If there's a big change, boundary change, that way we can send it to ISO and they can make those changes. So what happens with ISO Insurance Services Office is we send them, we have our own, we're the only state that has our own ratings inspectors. We collect that information. We determine some of those values and send it to ISO and they put it in their system. And when someone comes to buy a new property, the insurance agent will need to contact ISO to get the insurance rating information. So if we want that, if you want that for your county updated, send that to us anytime. It doesn't have to be when we do an inspection. Fire response district polygons, there shouldn't be any gaps. Like we mentioned in the data, these should be full. We want to know exactly where you respond. Somebody, if somebody's having an issue, right here, if there's a fire, somebody's going to respond. And that's what we really want to know. To simplify things for local GIS, we get, this is a common question I get a lot. Do I have to send you the 1.5, the 2.5 miles? Do I need to send you the 5 mile, 6 mile district? The answer is no. I think those things are very valuable to keep up with from the county perspective, so you can keep inventory on these things. But all we are concerned with is the full response district. And again, municipal boundaries. Here's why it's important to give us the latest municipal boundary information. If you have an annex out here, you have a neighborhood in this boundary, and this doesn't exist in the mapping, we have no record of it. And you have a subdivision right here in the circled area, it could be considered a class 10 because we don't know it exists, but having it be within that municipal boundary, it can now be classified within 5 miles of that fire department. So we're going to ask for water points. And what would be really helpful for us if you have this information is to identify the specific type of water point, be a pressure hydrant, dry hydrant, or suction point. And also let us know that it's a, so yeah, this is a water point. Actually, in general, you could have a layer for hydrants and then one for water points if you want to separate that or keep it together and label it this way. But a pressurized hydrant are just, the ones that your dogs tend to gravitate to when you take them on a walk. The red hydrants you see everywhere. Those are your standard ones, but dry hydrants are the ones where you see that are installed a pipe. They look like little straws, and there's it might be connected to a lake or a pond, or a suction point is also where you can draft water out of, like a lake or a pond. Supplying incomplete data, hydrant data can lead to inaccurate coverage percentage for that fire station. So a good portion of that rating is how many hydrants fall within 1,000 feet of, how many hydrants fall within 1,000 feet of structures. Is that correct, Vernon?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Especially
Okay.
in the commercial area, we're looking for how much water is available to fight fire with, and the more hydrants, the more credit sometimes.
So that can really help boost the credit. And I know, do the best you can. I know we've had discussions about this, that sometimes it's hard to get hydrant data, and it's something to work towards. And I know our ratings inspectors have a method to, if there are some missing, to maybe add some in, if we can prove that they exist. But this is just going to help speed things up a lot if we can more accurate the hydrant information that's available. Importance of data accuracy. The accuracy of the data submitted can have an impact on the overall rating. ISO uses what you give them. So if you give them something with a gap, they're going to assume that your fire district stopped here, 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 and here, and that there's nothing here, which in truth, somebody's responding. So that's why we're pushing for the full response district. So with that, I'm going to give you a couple of mapping tips before we head on over to questions. Best practice that we recommend is create fire district boundaries that are coincident, that share a boundary with neighboring districts. So, or other words, you've seen this before, parcel-based mapping. Create your districts parcel by parcel. Basically, if you have, if you're within 5 miles, and I'm going to disclaim this. I know that it's different by every jurisdiction, and there are even political reasons involved for having a fire district be the way it is. But in best practice, real world scenario, if this fire district is 5 miles from a station, and your road, say this is a road, if you can see my mouse here, it's following. So there's a section of road over here, and the end of your driveway meets that road that's within 5 miles from that station. Take the whole property, put it in that fire district. And that, in regards to that, you do have private drives, and those aren't included. So don't include the private drive, just include where the access is at the end of that private drive. And just go parcel by parcel, no more point to point, no just cutting through properties. Just take individual properties and allocate them to fire districts. And I have circled a couple examples here where you might have a couple of big properties that that are several acres, but the access, you want to use the access to the property. So the access to the property may be miles away over on this side, and that's where you want to allocate that whole property to that. And there might be another road on the backside that this neighboring property has. And I'll have my contact. I'll be glad to answer any questions about that if anybody wants to contact me about that. But those are the best practices. And these are some ways we can help. Basically, if you have any questions, we can consult with fire district mapping. We also do, we perform a lot of inquiries. So if a property owner has an issue with, say their property is right on the boundary, they feel like they are within 5 miles of a station, ISO, that they can send out an inquiry, and we can check with ISO about it. And then in our office, we can use our local data sets to run that and validate whether that is correct or not. And that's the benefit of having our own local inspectors, is that we can use North Carolina data. We're not using a national data set. We can use our own data to actually verify locations. So I think we're at the point where we can turn it over to questions. We got about 10 minutes, but for now, I'm going to throw my contact up here, and I got more contacts coming later, but for now, we'll just start with questions.
Thanks, Adam. So if anyone has questions, please go ahead and type those into the chat now. Adam, I was wondering, how often do the people who are mapping these fire districts, do they ever consult you to make sure that they're following parcel boundaries or that they've got their entire municipal boundary in there?
That's happened more and more frequently over the past year or two. And a lot of times what will happen is Vernon and crew will go out and we'll do a rating and we'll realize, okay, this isn't matching up. Or there's been a couple of times where, you know, we've worked with counties where we can see what ISO has, but it's not available for public viewing, but we can match the boundaries up and realize, okay, you're going to submit some boundary changes that are completely different than what ISO has, and that's going to totally change the landscape of your insurance ratings. So that's when we'll have a consultation and then discuss what we recommend, which is parcel-based boundaries. Because Vernon can talk about this, but as of like less than 10 years ago, most folks are still using paper maps for this. So a lot of these are digitized using point to point, so that we understand this is just an ongoing process, and we're just trying to set things up for the future and future inspections.
So who in the county or the city government typically does the mapping for the fire districts?
It's different. I would say the majority is your county GIS shops. You know, some counties, smaller counties that have resources, they might be using a vendor, just anyone, but it doesn't need to be, there needs to be a unified effort. Okay, I'll say this. So basically, a requirement for an inspection is an adopted map. So the map has to be adopted by the county commissioners. So that digitized version has to be approved by the county entity somehow, saying this is officially our fire districts. So it can't be just someone sending it in and here's our fire districts. It has to be actually approved. And that's the only thing. If you need to send in something halfway through the period for a change, we just need to make sure it's been adopted by your county.
Yes, we'll need either by resolution or through the minutes of their commissioners meeting where they approve it. We must have that before we send it to ISO. So that's real important and not difficult to do, but that notifies the county commissioners of whose fire districts are protecting what people, because this gets very political sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So Rich Elkins has said, I highly endorse Adam's best practices suggestion of basing districts on parcel boundaries and where the access is located. And Catherine Clifton has asked, what's the easiest way to find out when the next inspection is coming within my county?
That's a Vernon question.
You can email me or call me and I can give you a tentative schedule about when we'll be in your county. And my email address is vernon.ward@ncdoi.gov.
And you should be able to get that also. I think everybody has access to the participant list for the conference. So if you've met somebody or you want to contact one of the speakers, you should be able to get to that information. We have one more question here from Matthew Geiger, it looks like. And Matthew, I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong. Does the ISO rating actually dictate the insurance rate, or does the insurance company just use the rating as information in their own calculations?
On homeowners insurance, the insurance companies 99% of the time will use that rating. When it comes to commercial properties, they'll use that rating as part of their formula, but it's not, there's a lot more factors go into commercial property sometimes. But for homeowners, most of the time they're using, and most insurance companies are using that rating, that number as the guide.
And Catherine just said, thanks, Vernon, just trying to be prepared for the next round of inspections.
Okay.
Yeah.
The way we're doing now, I mean, it used to, we would hit a county, and we still do this right regularly where we're in a county and do a lot at the same time, but our guys are getting more efficient and doing it. And we're hitting we're hitting about 70 counties a year and we're visiting. So we're likely to be in your county most any time.
I just want to mention one thing I did put up on the screen. If you have specific ratings and questions, what ratings questions, yeah, either look up Vernon or you have your regional inspectors, and I have a map of who they are by county. If you can see that. And so these are the folks, if you have immediate ratings questions, contact them.
We have one more question that's come in here. In Pitt County, rather than changing each of the districts, which were adopted individually over a long period of time, they created a new set of response districts based on parcel boundaries, adopting the countywide map and new tax rates for each, and zeroed out the older districts that were no longer taxed by their old boundaries. It was a very involved process, but ended up with a much better product. That came from Rich Elkins.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
yes.
a success story. Yeah.
I just worked with those maps this past week, and you're right. Those are much better maps and much cleaner, a lot better.
Well, thank you too for this presentation, and thanks everyone for coming to the conference. I hope that you've learned something. I hope you've met some new people, and I hope to see you at our next conference. This is the last session of the day, but we do have our closing remarks. So I encourage you to go to the closing remarks, and thank you again for attending the conference.